participants who are joining virtually. A warm welcome to everyone joining us, both here in the room and online, for this exciting session. You are most welcome. So this section will explore how utilities are transforming service delivery through partnerships, private sector collaboration, and innovative financing models. We will hear inspiring practical cases of how public utilities and service providers are driving inclusion, sustainability, and resilience by thinking differently about financing and partnerships. So we have three main goals for the section. The first one is to showcase innovative utility-led models that are scaling equitable and climate-resilient services. Secondly, we will explore how utilities and service providers can operationalize the human right to water and sanitation through sustainable, locally driven solutions. And finally, we're going to encourage dialogue on how partnerships and financing mechanisms can help service providers move from pilot to systemic transformation. So we are privileged to feature three transformative examples from across the water and sanitation sector. The first example, or the first case, is from the Ghana Water Limited. Ghana Water will talk about the Social Connection Fund, which is an innovative utility-led mechanism which is helping advance equitable water service for underserved urban communities. The Social Connection Fund demonstrates how utilities can mobilize local financing through pooled funds as well as tariff-based surcharges to address inequality and deliver on the human right to water services without relying on aid. The second one will be from the UN Sanitation and Hygiene Fund, which we call Next Generation Sanitation, the NGS. The NGS is a transformative, market-based approach to non-sewage sanitation. So we will explore how public sanitation utilities, especially from low-income urban contexts, can leverage the NGS to expand service delivery. The presenter will highlight on the case of the Kampala, where Kampala City Council has formalized public-private partnerships and introduced results-based financing to scale up sanitation services. And then the third is from our cousins from West Africa, Onia, Burkina Faso, where our presenter will talk about climate resilience and mitigation, and will show us a forward-looking example of how a national utility is integrating renewable energy, biogas recovery, decentralized sanitation, and reforestation into its operations. This initiative links climate mitigation directly with operational cost reduction and long-term sustainability. So together, these three experiences will help us to unpack how public utilities and service providers can be powerful drivers of inclusion, climate resilience, and sustainable financing through innovation and collaboration. So whether you are here with us in person or participating virtually, we invite you to engage actively, share your insights, your questions, and reflections as we learn from these three leading examples. So we will get started. Please join me in welcoming Engineer Michael Botibedu, my boss, with the General Manager Operations for Ghana Water Limited. Engineer Bedu has over 3 decades of experience in the water sector and has led many major initiatives in planning, investments, and infrastructure developments. He has played a pivotal role in shaping Ghana Water Limited's growth and innovation over the past years. So let's warmly welcome my boss with a round of applause.
Good morning. I hope we are all fine. We can talk about those who cannot afford. When there's accessibility that we cannot afford, we need to see how best we can innovate to make them inclusive, to enjoy water. What are we talking about? A lot of urban communities in Ghana, poor communities, have difficulty in accessing water due to high connection cost, service connection cost. When you look at how to serve them water, traditional models don't do them. This comes about with inequality in water access, because you realize we have urbanization coming through, engulf villages and communities. You realize that in the urban space, there are some communities that cannot afford. The space has now become affluent, but the affluency came to meet the marginalized. So they are there, they are not getting. So what do? Think we thought out of the box to see how best to ensure that at least the human rights to water as squared by UN is done. So definitely, what is the Social Connection Fund? What is the Social Connection Fund? The Social Connection Fund is a mechanism that Ghana Water Limited has put in place that looks at pooling internal and external resources to address the affordability gap. And we firmly believe that doing that promotes equitable access and also the use of local financing, because you need to start from somewhere. How does it work? It establishes a dedicated fund from fees from our new service connections and also personal contributions. How is it done? We look at go into the community, look at what the community can afford in terms of service connection. For instance, if the service connection total cost is about 500 euro, we go into and say, fine, our cost is 500 euro. How much are you able to provide so that you can get water? So if they say it's 200 euro, 100 euro, then it means we must look for funding for the difference. And through our development partners and support sponsors, we are able to get this money. The 200 now is now put in a fund. That is called the Social Connection Fund. The 200 euros out of the 500 euro that the applicant was able to pay for the house connection is now put into a fund, a pool of funds called the Social Connection Fund. So, like I said before, it's a joint effort between Ghana Water, our local authorities, as a municipal metropolitan assemblies, for village engagement. This helps us in encouraging planning by the communities themselves and for them to own it. How is that also done? We enter the community, we animate the community, we make sure that they understand the water and sanitation hygiene cycle, promote good hygiene practices. At the end of the day, bring them on board to support whatever they're going to take. So more or less, they even go ahead to reduce our technical losses in terms of whenever there's water pipe burst or burst, they know who to contact, not to just put it in the space for someone to pick, but who to contact so that it will be done as soon as possible. It's all under this water operation partnership framework that we do. What are the results? We have more than thousands of, it's about 20,000 now, low-income households now connected through these subsidies. Because it's a fully fund. If Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, Mr. D, up to Z, they pay 200. Then it means we get 26 times 200. And the 26 times 200 divided by 500 will give you the number of connections that you can make. So as the more people come on board, the more we are able to get the money to do more. That's also ensure, like I said earlier, customer satisfaction. Everybody knows that at least when he has the water, he can pay. More of the people say low income household cannot pay the water charges as a result of consumption. That is also not true. Because in the animation, in the community engagement, we ensure that we empower them to be paying. If you don't have to pay €100, you don't want to pay, you cannot pay €100 at a go. And you are a trader and you get your money in bits. Every week you can pay €5. At the end of the day, in the month, you realize that you don't have anybody to owe and you get water. Promote so many interventions. That's also helped us to learn and replicate model for plant utilities. What are we looking at? Currently, we are using the partnership from our development partners under the work framework to be able to assess that amount. For it to be more sustainable and to reach a large audience, we are in discussions with the regulator to see how best you can put a surcharge on the tariff so that every cubic meter consumed will give us some money to be able to serve the low-income household. What's the model about? The model is now still being tried, but I can say that for the past 4 or 5 years, that is what we have been using. Because aside the development partner contributions, we have been able to use what we have saved, which is about more than 1 million Ghana cedis. We divide roughly about 150,000 euro to do more connections. So if I say even €1 and 2,000 euro is the cost of one service connection, so we can do about 750 or so, which more or less brings more revenue to Ghana Water going forward, and also satisfaction to the customer. We encouraging trying to replicate in other utilities. Kuma Valley for one, that we are doing the work with, we are trying to do that. And lastly, to integrate the social connection fund into our Ghana Water in our corporate process. Now it's like a one-off intervention that we are trying, but we want to institutionalize it. Make sure that in our corporate plan, there's the need to grow the fund from one amount to the other in the planning horizon. We do our planning horizon in a 5-year period. It's a rolling plan. We assess it quarterly, every 6 months, and yearly. So that's the part of our going forward. What can we take away? The main issue here is that we promote inclusion. Promote inclusion using local mechanism. By saying that, all I'm trying to say is that there's something every utility can do in our part of the world, and look at how best, when you don't have funding from partners, other institutions, can still let life be better for low-income households. We are open to financing. Yes, we've done something that is working, but we still need to do more in terms of innovations to bridge the gap, affordability gap. Earlier on, I said that water is accessible. but it's difficult for low income, the poor income households in the urban settings to be able to access water. So they don't use the right quality of water, and it affects health and other interventions. Talk about partnerships and transparency. It's very clear what we are doing. If you understand what you are doing, there's no need for us not to ensure that we scale it up. Scaling it up will bring benefit to larger population. Finally, we have the right to water as a UN charter. Human rights to water. Everybody must have water. But water is not free. Water is paid for. How best are we going to make it accessible? That can easily be done. But how can we make it affordable to the urban poor? I believe all of us know how the urban poor survive. But we want to make life better for them. And it's through these interventions that we are showing that it is doable. On that note, I want to thank you, and I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that inspiring presentation. This shows that Ghana Water has put a lot of attention into serving poor households, because almost every one of us here, I believe we have water in our homes. When we turn it on, then it starts flowing. We use the shower. But you go to some communities, whole communities, and you find just about 2 or 3 houses with water in their homes. And this is where Ghana Water is doing a good job making sure that they are turning the equity challenge into social impacts, making sure that whole communities, households, poor households, vulnerable people also have water in their homes. They can turn on the tap and fetch water early in the morning. Girls can fetch water and bath at home before they go to school. Women do not have to trek long distances to fetch water. This is what we are doing, and it is a strong reminder that with vision and commitment, utilities can make the right to water and sanitation a practical, lived reality for everyone. Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking on this challenge and leading it, championing it in Ghana Water. So our second speaker is Mr. Anton Jantunen. I believe I pronounced it well. Anton is a sanitation market specialist from the UN Sanitation and Hygiene Fund based in Switzerland. He leads the UN Sanitation and Hygiene Fund's sanitation markets work, spanning from private sector to commercial financing. Before joining the SHF in 2022, he spent a decade in the private sector as an investment banker, a venture capital investor, an impact investor, and a C-level startup executive in Europe and Africa. He's a big man. He has a lot of financing up his sleeves. So, ladies and gentlemen, kindly join me in welcoming Anton on stage to deliver his presentation. So, Anton, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Faustina, and great to see so many of you here, as well as hopefully some people online as well. So, all right, so, okay, sorry. So I'm going to present you the next generation sanitation approach by Sanitation and Hygiene Fund. It's a market-based approach to sanitation. So I'm going to try to be brief since we have a limited time. Great. So SHF, or UN Sanitation and Hygiene Fund, was basically created to address sanitation and hygiene crisis through market-based approaches. So we're actually quite a small team of about 15 people across Geneva, Nairobi, and Abidjan currently. All right, so we look at sanitation from kind of this perspective. There's two sides of it. There's the sewer sanitation or centralized sanitation, and then there's the decentralized non-sewer off-grid sanitation. Currently, when we look at the statistics, we know that in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, only 7% have access to sewer sanitation, which is a relatively low figure. And there's definitely a place for both, and both are needed in different settings. At the same time, we know that in many contexts, non-sewer sanitation can be actually much more cost efficient, more suitable, more modular as well to build. So when we then work with the governments, our focus is primarily on the non-sewer side. We're trying to support the national governments to actually set targets for non-sewer sanitation. That's not the case in many places. Kenya has targets. For example, in Kenya, Kenyan government has set a target of provide 60% of its sanitation coverage through non-sewer sanitation. This essentially then sets a way to then build markets around that and then focus on these market-based solutions for this non-sewer sanitation, then to essentially to create jobs and economic growth. The sanitation markets, even though sanitation is a public service, it's also quite a massive market opportunity to create economic growth as well as jobs. So when we look at these 5 countries alone in Kenya, in Africa, have a $19 billion sanitation market potential. Kenya alone is almost $2 billion, expected to grow to $3 billion in the next 5 years. So it is actually a big market opportunity despite being a public service. And then, so what is this NGS we talk about, next generation sanitation? In short, it's an innovative approach to non-sewer sanitation through the markets. There's a few principles listed here. I'm not going to go through them one by one. You can read them. But in the core of this is the involvement and collaboration of both public and private sectors. And this is then our approach to it. How do we look at it from the public-private collaboration side? So first pocket, number one, we support public sector. This is where the utilities, of course, come in. We support public sector utilities, municipalities, and national governments to create suitable market environment for sanitation markets. And I'm going to look at the example with you so you get an idea soon how this actually works. Secondly, since it's a collaboration, we support the private sector side, for example, the enterprises, i.e. the service providers in many instances, with technical assistance, financing, as well as investor de-risking to bring in commercial funding for the private sector. And thirdly, probably the most challenging one, so we help public sector, again, utilities primarily municipalities to develop pipeline and projects for sanitation, which could be to some extent commercially financed. That's of course not an easy job in a public service market. But then we also then make sure by de-risking, incentivizing the financiers to finance these pipelines. So we know that it's not going to be 100% commercial, but there might be some elements, and with right incentives, we can actually bring in some form of commercial funding to it. Now to the example from Kampala. So this kind of what I went through is kind of the theory, and now there's an actual case example of one of our projects in Kampala with the KCCA. Firstly, I want to mention that SHF itself, as you heard, we're only a small team. We don't implement at the country level. That's why my presentation is also a bit more higher level than Michael's presentation from the utility level. So we basically design and then we finance projects. Then we find the suitable implementing partners in the countries to implement and execute the projects. And in Kampala, through our partner Water for People, among other sub-implementers in Kampala as well, we've been supporting KCCA, the Kampala Capital City Authority. And of course, all of this work is utility-led. We're just there to support them in their plans. And guide them in some directions that they're going into. So what we've done, we've developed service level agreements, basically formalized contracts between private sector and the utility. On top of that, we've built results-based financing models for the outcomes for the private sector. So for example, when they deliver to the human waste, there's actually a results-based model based on how much they deliver. We've been connecting households to private operators for this waste collection and transport treatment. Done licensing of the private sector as well, and established quality standards. There's also a hotline for the customers; they can actually give feedback for the service. So this is relatively simple. The results have been quite tremendous so far. So the safe waste removal has nearly doubled. There's actually like a clear uptake of private sector formalization, and this for us that actually has meant there's more formal jobs, there's more youth jobs. Actually, women have been empowered through it as well. There's lots of women entrepreneurs in the business as well in Kampala. There's the health benefits, environmental health. For example, cholera has been a large issue in Kampala historically. There's definitely increases in or decrease in the cholera numbers through this, as well as then the climate side of groundwater contamination has decreased, as well as the methane emissions, which in Kampala are quite enormous, actually contributing 50% of the climate emissions in the city. This has come through sanitation historically. And this example has then incentivized or pushed the national government to give more funding for it. They've seen that actually this works, and then last year they actually came in and gave another 1.5 million for this work from their own budget. So this good example of us working with KCCA through Water for People has then also incentivized, of course, with simultaneous work with the national government to then in additional funding. And on top of this, not part of the example, but we are at the same time, for example, in Kampala, supporting the SMEs directly, as I mentioned in the previous slide, with technical assistance as well as financing to make sure that they can actually scale up the service levels. That was my last one. So there's a lot of things here, so we didn't go into much details, but please come have a chat afterwards. I'm happy to provide more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. So now we are moving from seeing sanitation as a burden to sanitation as a business. He talked about sanitation's untapped markets amounting to more than $15 billion for just 5 countries. So this shows that there's a market for sanitation services, and utilities should see it as an opportunity to build the service ecosystem, for households and for communities that are struggling with services. So thank you, Anthony. This is a good example, a powerful example, of course, of how innovation, markets, and partnerships, are reimagining urban sanitation services. And it will be good to scale some of these initiatives up in some of the utilities that we are working in. So we move on quickly to our third presenter, Mr. Nepomucene Isai Bombiri. Mr. Bombiri is an environmental engineer and the director of sanitation operations, National Water and Sanitation Company, Onia, Burkina Faso. So, Mr. Bombiri, kindly take the stage and deliver your presentation. He's here with Mr. Seydou Kouaga, but Mr. Kouaga will join us during the panel discussion. So you take the stage now to deliver your presentation. Let's give him a round of
applause.
Merci bien. Bonjour, messieurs, dames. Nous allons parler en français. Question de diversifier un peu. Voilà. Alors, notre communication va porter sur la résilience climatique et la rentabilité des sociétés d'eau et d'assainissement à partir de l'exemple du Burkina Faso. Voilà, l'Office national de l'eau et de l'assainissement du Burkina Faso. Alors, une petite présentation du Burkina Faso. Vous avez la carte. Et le Burkina Faso est situé au cœur de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, en Afrique. Voilà. Euh, alors, quelques chiffres. Le Burkina Faso, le Burkina Faso fait 24 millions d'habitants environ, avec 52% de femmes, et la population urbaine fait environ 30%. Alors, l'Office national de l'eau et de l'assainissement, l'ONEA, a pour mission les services d'eau potable et d'assainissement dans les villes et dans la zone urbaine et périurbaine, et les localités d'au moins 10 000 habitants. Alors, à nos jours, l'ONEA couvre environ un peu plus du tiers de sa zone d'intervention, soit 62 centres. Alors, de façon globale, en termes de chiffres, le taux d'accès à l'eau potable au Burkina Faso est d'environ 79,24%, avec un faible taux d'accès à l'assainissement qui fait 40,53%. Alors, le nombre d'abonnés de l'ONEA actuellement est estimé à environ 542 000 abonnés. Donc, c'est pour dire qu'il y a quand même des défis à relever. Nous avons beaucoup de challenges. Alors, pour l'atteinte des ODD 6, de l'ODD 6, nous avons quand même beaucoup de challenges à l'image de ce qu'on a au tableau. Nous avons un déficit quand même d'approvisionnement en eau potable, surtout la continuité du service qu'il faut rattraper. Nous avons des difficultés au niveau de l'assainissement également. Le slide précédent a signalé qu'on est à environ 40%. Et ça, c'est un gros challenge qu'il faut rattraper. Et nous sommes tributaires des risques climatiques. Alors, à l'image à droite, nous avons une station de traitement à Ouaga en 2009 qui a été totalement inondée, qui nous a amené à arrêter l'approvisionnement de la ville pendant un bon bout de temps. À gauche, nous avons une image du barrage de Ziga qui alimente la ville de Ouagadougou, qui est la capitale, à au moins 90%, où nous avons permanemment une forte dégradation de la qualité de l'eau liée au changement climatique. Là, nous avons un exemple de bloom algal que nous avons connu en 2017 et nous en avons connu la même chose également en fin 2023 et 2024. C'est pour dire que nous sommes vraiment acculés par les changements climatiques et dans ce sens, on n'a pas autre choix que de concilier changement climatique, durabilité et viabilité économique de notre société. Alors, je signale que, contrairement à beaucoup d'autres sociétés, l'ONEA est une société d'État. Voilà, donc le capital appartient entièrement à l'État. Voilà. Et quelles sont les problématiques auxquelles nous faisons face? Le Burkina Faso est dans un climat un climat de type soudano-sahélien. C'est-à-dire on a deux saisons, une saison sèche et une saison humide. Et nous faisons face à une crise, une rareté croissante de la ressource en eau au regard des changements climatiques. Et nous connaissons régulièrement des vagues de chaleur, des sécheresses et des inondations. Alors, en plus de cela, la population est à un niveau de vie assez faible, avec 43,2% qui vivent en dessous de 1,04 € par jour, ce qui est une contrainte pour nous parce que nous ne pouvons pas réajuster permanemment notre tarif de l'eau, qui est un service public. Donc, il faut tenir compte de la capacité de payer de nos populations. Alors, en plus de cela, le service d'eau est quand même tributaire de l'électricité. Nous utilisons pour la plupart de nos stations le réseau national, qui est si bien que nous avons, en termes de consommation d'énergie, au-delà de 91 millions de kWh par an. Et les réseaux n'étant pas toujours continus, les services d'électricité n'étant pas continus, nous avons recours aussi au groupe électrogène. Et là, nous sommes à 1,5 million de consommation de gasoil par an. Et tout cela, mis ensemble, nous sommes, le coût de l'énergie fait au moins 16% du chiffre d'affaires de l'ONEA, ce qui n'est pas négligeable. Et en plus de cela, l'utilisation des énergies fossiles est génératrice de gaz à effet de serre. Voilà, et avec l'outil ECAM, nous avons évalué le bilan carbone de l'ONEA qui est légèrement au-delà de 50 000 tonnes équivalent de CO2. Alors, quelles sont les solutions que l'ONEA a développées pour pouvoir accroître sa résilience en matière de changement climatique? D'abord, au niveau de la gouvernance, tous les outils de gouvernance, la dimension changement climatique a été intégrée au niveau de nos outils de gouvernance. Nous avons une budgétisation sensible au climat et nous avons un planning. Et en plus de cela, l'ONEA s'est doté cette année, avec l'accompagnement de son partenaire, la GIZ, d'une stratégie d'adaptation et bas carbone de 2025 à 2029. Alors, en termes d'énergie renouvelable, l'ONEA s'est doté d'un certain nombre d'un parc solaire. Alors, nous avons 105 sites solaires actuellement avec une capacité cumulée de 3,05 MW crête, ce qui nous fait une production annuelle d'au moins 3,8 millions de kilowatts par an, 8 kWh par an, et une rentabilité brute de 528 000 euros par an, voilà, à l'instant actuel. Alors, en plus de ça, nous avons un évitement carbone de 2214,49 tonnes équivalent de CO2. Voilà, donc ça nous permet de contribuer à la résilience climatique, à l'atténuation des émissions de gaz à effet de serre. En termes de partenariat, l'ONEA, dans le cadre du renforcement de sa résilience climatique, a développé un certain nombre de partenariats avec d'autres structures. D'abord, au niveau local, les communautés locales contribuent énormément en termes de protection des ressources en eau, en termes de reboisement et d'entretien des différents plans que nous faisons pour pouvoir limiter l'envasement de nos cours d'eau, puisque l'ONEA utilise deux sources, les eaux souterraines et les eaux de surface. Voilà. Donc, au niveau de la protection des berges, les communautés locales sont beaucoup impliquées. Et également, en termes de système d'alerte précoce, les communautés locales qui connaissent très bien la zone contribuent également à ce niveau pour une meilleure résilience vis-à-vis des risques climatiques. Alors, l'ONEA a également signé des accords avec des institutions de recherche, notamment les universités. On a signé un partenariat avec l'université Nazim Boni pour pouvoir faire des recherches dans le domaine de la valorisation agricole des boues qui sont issus des stations de traitement. Les résultats sont disponibles. Nous passerons très bientôt à l'échelle pour pouvoir mettre à disposition ces boues de vidange-là compostés aux populations pour une valorisation agricole. Parce que le Burkina Faso, la population est essentiellement basée sur l'agriculture. Alors, nous avons également un partenariat avec l'université Joseph Kizerbo pour pouvoir faire des recherches, puisque nous sommes dans un contexte hydrogéologique très difficile. Donc, il y a un partenariat avec l'université de Joseph Kizerbo pour pouvoir faire des recherches sur la potentialité des ressources en eau de nos différents sites, afin d'avoir des forages de grand débit qui vont nous permettre de mettre en place des centres de production d'eau, c'est-à-dire prendre l'eau où elle est disponible pour pouvoir envoyer là où elle n'existe pas, là où le déficit est là où le besoin est. Voilà, donc nous avons également des partenariats avec des acteurs internationaux dans le domaine de l'efficacité énergétique. Là, la GIZ intervient également dans le domaine des investissements en termes de stations de traitement de boues de vidange, et également dans le domaine de l'optimisation de nos process de traitement. Voilà, on a eu à développer certains WOP, notamment avec l'ONI du Maroc, pour pouvoir accroître notre performance en termes de traitement au regard de la dégradation croissante de la qualité de nos eaux. Alors, quelles sont les perspectives que nous nous donnons pour pouvoir accroître davantage notre résilience au changement climatique? Alors, comme je l'ai signalé tantôt, nous avons élaboré une stratégie d'adaptation et d'atténuation au changement climatique, et cette stratégie balaie un peu tout ce qu'il nous faut pour pouvoir être en 2029 quand même une société d'eau quand même résiliente. Alors, et cette stratégie, nous avons besoin de financement de 35,7 millions d'euros, et nous avons également en vue très bientôt de mettre en place des systèmes d'alerte précoce au niveau de nos captages pour pouvoir anticiper et puis accroître notre résilience vis-à-vis des inondations et autres, les risques climatiques que nous avons à ce niveau. Comme je l'ai signalé aussi, nous allons passer très vite à l'échelle pour pouvoir valoriser nos bouts de vidange que nous avons produits depuis là, qui sont stockés, afin que cela puisse être mis à disposition des populations pour l'agriculture. Alors, nous avons l'ambition aussi de doter chaque centre ONEA d'une station de bout de vidange, parce que c'est très important. Nous n'avons que, pour le moment, 2 villes qui ont des stations de bout de vidange, et il y a certains qui sont en construction, notamment une 3e au niveau du nord du pays. Et nous avons des études, 8 études de stations de traitement de bout de vidange qui sont disponibles, qui ont été financées, et qui vont démarrer bientôt, qui ont été financées par la Banque africaine de développement. Alors, du côté des investissements solaires, alors nous envisageons, nous avons des études également qui sont disponibles, qui sont les études de faisabilité, qui n'attendent que le financement pour la suite du processus. Alors, nous avons un premier projet de 8,81 MW crête, avec un coût d'investissement de 13,2 millions d'euros et un retour sur investissement de 10 ans. Un deuxième projet de 290,7 kW crête, avec un coût d'investissement de 0,4 millions d'euros et un retour sur investissement de 6 ans. Donc, tout ça, ce sont des... Le solaire est rentable, mais au début, il faut un grand investissement. Donc, pour cela, l'ONEA n'y arrivera pas seul. Il a besoin de ses partenaires pour un meilleur accompagnement. Alors, pour terminer, je dirais que la vision de l'ONEA, c'est d'être une entreprise performante, verte et résiliente au changement climatique à l'horizon 2029. Et pour aboutir à pour concrétiser cette vision, nous avons besoin de mettre en œuvre nos projets, nos initiatives et de développer des partenariats à travers les WOP en termes de financement, en termes de technologie, de transfert de technologie et en termes de partage d'expérience. L'ONU aussi est disposée à partager son expérience avec les autres sociétés aussi, afin que nous allions tous vers la neutralité carbone. Et pour terminer, je dirais qu'investir dans la résilience climatique, c'est soutenir le secteur de l'eau et de l'assainissement et investir également dans le futur de nos populations. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Bombere. Indeed, the climate issue is a water issue, and it is heartwarming to see a utility in Burkina Faso that is taking the lead and actioning it. So thank you for that remarkable insight. It's truly inspiring to see a public utility leading on climate action, linking renewable energy, reforestation, sustainability, solar-powered systems directly to utility performance. This is a forward-looking model for how utilities can be both service providers and stewards of the environment. Well done, Onia. I see your MD is here. You are doing well. So we will come and learn from you. Yeah, that is the essence of the WOPS, right? Which is very good. So we will now transition to our panel discussion. We have some few questions to ask our dear presenters. And in the panel discussion, we will delve deeper into the 3 approaches, really examine the enabling factors for their success, and also reflect on how such models can be adapted and scaled in different contexts. So I will now invite our panelists to join the discussion with me here. Engineer Bedu, Mr. Seidu, Mr. Isaiah, Anton, kindly join me upstage. Kindly note it down, because we are going to give opportunity to ask you. So you're welcome to the high table, where you get to answer all the difficult questions. My first question goes to Engineer Michael Botibedu, because he is sitting close to me and he's also my boss. And I feel comfortable working with him. We'll come back to the floor, please. Please, can you hear me? Yes, yes. You'll be given the opportunity to ask the question, but allow me to ask my questions first, and then you will come in. Thank you for your understanding. So, Chief, the Social Connection Fund is multi-sourced, and it is also a transparent financing model that blends internal revenues with partner support to make water access sustainable for low-income households. Looking ahead, how can this model be scaled or replicated, both within Ghana and across other African countries, to strengthen the human rights to water through collaborative governance and South-South cooperation?
Thank you very much. I believe that from where we've started on the portage of innovation and with our partners, and through the same level of collaboration that we shared with our partners, I believe that once it's transparent and once the data is available and the figures show, we would still do a lot of consultations with our partners. And I believe they have representatives sitting down here can later dwell into the nitty-gritty of what we have done and make it sustainable. One interesting aspect is that you need to start from somewhere. You need to build a reserve, and the reserve that we built was based on collaboration with our partners. And now our fund is solid and is growing. The mechanism that we use to build up the fund is available. Maybe we need to do more discussions and engagement with stakeholders to make it better. So I believe that there's success. See it as a bright opportunity to improve it. And the same way we started with our partners, will come to the same way that we can spread it around.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I move to my extreme left, Anthony. Can you hear me? Okay, so given that sanitation is a public service, why does the Sanitation Hygiene Fund focus so much on market-based models and sanitation markets? Why is that?
Yeah, I think there's two good reasons why we do that. First is that we know there's 3.4 billion people without access to sanitation. We know that ODA budgets are decreasing. National government budgets for sanitation have always been very small, and we're not seeing that they would suddenly increase substantially. So there simply isn't enough money in the markets to suddenly just provide the access for these 3.4 billion people without bringing in private sector and the market-based solutions. I think that's the key reason. On the same note, as I mentioned in my presentation, it is actually a big market. The market already exists. We have to go in there and try to untap the markets to make them grow in the sanitation sector. I think those are the key reasons, and I think the only way we believe the only way to actually accelerate this sanitation access is through market-based solutions and markets. It's gonna be too slow without bringing in market forces into it, and that's why it's key to work with not only with the public sector, which is obviously key and leading the work, but to bring in also or leverage these national development banks. For example, we have a partnership in Nigeria with the Development Bank of Nigeria, leverage private sector enterprises, as well as commercial banks in some instances, and impact investors to bring quicker scale to it.
Okay, so this is a follow-up question. What has been your experience working with the KCCA in Kampala? And why is the example of Kampala important to highlight?
Yeah, I think Kampala, first, of course, they have a good team. It's a very committed sanitation team at KCCA who's taken ownership of this. So they're really leading the work. We're just really supporting them through Water for People. So I think that's the first key thing to note here. You really have to have a committed team at the utility to lead and drive things forward. And if you look at what we've actually done, it is quite simple actions: formalizing the sector, connecting private with households, bringing in some results-based outcome models in there. Yet we've actually achieved quite good results with this, I would say. And what's interesting is that I think it's a model that can be scaled. So my background in coming directly from, for example, an enterprise in Africa where I worked before, where we grew from $250,000 to $50 million business in 2.5 years. So I'm always looking for things. How can we scale things? What is scalable instead of just doing one thing there and then something else somewhere else? And I think this is a model that can be scaled. It doesn't mean we can necessarily scale it. We can scale it to a certain point in Kampala, but it can be scaled in other locations as well. And it's not some sort of a unique thing that hasn't been done anywhere. Absolutely not. There's a lot of good examples from different locations, but it's one example, one model that could be used with other utilities to scale up sanitation, perhaps in a quicker way than the traditional models have done.
Okay, that is fine. So commitment is key, and I'll add positive attitude. Because if you don't exhibit good human behavior, I believe some of these initiatives will never come to your utility anyway. So next, I move to Bombiri. You mentioned your water company's green initiatives. How do you assess the impact of these initiatives on local communities? Because sometimes utilities will talk about big things. Oh, and we are doing this and we are doing that. How is it impacting on the local communities that you are working with?
Merci bien, Faustina. Alors, comme vous l'avez dit, hein, tout ce qu'il y a comme activité et autres, comme travail, le but final, c'est d'améliorer les conditions de vie des populations, notamment les populations locales. Alors, les initiatives en termes de résilience climatique que nous avons entreprises ne sont pas seulement au bénéfice de l'ONEA, il y a des retombées aussi pour les populations locales. Alors, en termes de continuité du service, comme on l'a dit, la fourniture de l'électricité au niveau du réseau national n'est pas toujours continue, et quand il y a des coupures et autres, évidemment, nous avons un arrêt de l'approvisionnement. Voilà, donc l'investissement dans le solaire nous permet d'assurer cette continuité, et également, étant donné que l'énergie n'est pas suffisante, ce que l'ONEA devrait prendre, qui ne prend plus, pourra servir aux communautés locales et autres en termes d'approvisionnement, aux industries, et ainsi de suite. Alors, en plus de ça, nos centrales solaires qui sont là ont besoin d'une certaine maintenance, donc ça génère de l'emploi, aussi bien pour les populations locales, pour les questions de nettoyage basique et autres, ça fait une génération de recettes. Nous avons parlé de la question de compostage des boues pour la valorisation agricole. Alors, il est prévu très bientôt, avec l'accompagnement de notre partenaire, la GIZ, et également avec nos initiatives aussi sur fonds propres, de former un certain nombre de femmes prioritairement et de jeunes sur les techniques de compostage des boues de vidange pour la valorisation agricole. Donc, et cela va permettre de générer de l'emploi également à ce niveau. Et dernièrement, la question de mettre à disposition les boues de vidange compostées pour l'agriculture. Je disais tantôt que la population burkinabé est à grande majorité agricole. Cela va permettre d'accroître les rendements agricoles, et ça fera aussi, contribuera à la sécurisation alimentaire au niveau de nos populations, et également va générer des recettes pour ces agriculteurs.
I'm glad you brought in the issue of gender, the women and the children. We need to also build their capacity to make additional income through our services. Good work on that. So, what are the main challenges in generalizing the use of renewable energies through WOFs? Why are you here? Why are you sharing this with us? Tell us your challenges and how we can generalize the use of renewable energies through water operator partnerships. Bombiri, the
Alors,
question is to you.
comme on le disait, l'investissement dans les énergies renouvelables, le coût d'investissement dès le début est très élevé. Voilà, donc il faut d'abord un accès au financement. Il faut quand même des partenaires techniques et financiers qui sont prêts à accompagner pour amorcer. Comme on l'a dit, la rentabilité est nette, donc ce sont des ressources qui peuvent être retournées voilà, très vite. Voilà, donc deuxièmement, il faut aussi également des politiques au niveau de nos sociétés d'eau, qu'il y ait des politiques quand même qui prennent en compte les énergies renouvelables. Ce n'est pas évident pour tout le monde. L'ONEA s'est doté d'une stratégie d'adaptation et bas carbone. Voilà. Il est bon également que nos différentes sociétés-là voient comment est-ce qu'ils intègrent cette dimension-là dans leur stratégie pour que ce soit une orientation. Ce n'est pas tous les pays qui ont des difficultés en termes d'approvisionnement énergétique, mais il faut que nous allions vers des entreprises vertes. Voilà, donc, et troisièmement également, il y a la question du transfert de technologie. Voilà, il faut que la technologie n'est pas toujours disponible pour tout le monde. De plus en plus, dans le domaine des énergies renouvelables, la technologie évolue. Donc, il faut également que ceux qui détiennent la technologie, notamment ceux du Nord, acceptent quand même penser aux pays en voie de développement en termes de transfert de technologie et de renforcement de capacités. Voilà, merci.
Okay, thank you. So I move quickly to Mr. Seidu. You bring in the mind of the development partner in this discussion. Let's start with the balance between business and sustainability. In your view, what are the key levers that allow a water utility to remain financially profitable while also strengthening its climate resilience?
Pour la question, c'est vrai, la question climatique est une question intéressante quand on voit ce que cela peut générer pour les sociétés d'eau et pour l'humanité tout entière. Mais c'est nécessaire de prendre en compte trois dimensions essentielles. Tout d'abord, il y a la gouvernance, sans laquelle nous ne pouvons pas avoir une vision éclairée. Quand on arrive à avoir cette vision éclairée en la matière, on peut canaliser facilement les efforts qui sont déployés en interne au sein de ces sociétés d'eau-là et également susciter l'adhésion des partenaires extérieurs pour soutenir les initiatives qui sont entreprises. Quand je prends par exemple le cas de l'ONEA, c'est une entreprise qui est passée au-delà des questions de responsabilité sociétale de l'entreprise au brasser plus large pour prendre en compte les questions de résilience climatique. Et ce faisant, l'entreprise s'ouvre aux opportunités pour accéder aux fonds climatiques internationaux. Tout le dispositif est mis en place pour pouvoir saisir ces opportunités-là. Le deuxième élément, c'est faire attention sur les charges d'exploitation. Si on investit dans les énergies renouvelables qui sont coûteuses, il y a des postes de dépenses sur lesquels nous devons avoir une très bonne maîtrise. Le premier cas que je peux évoquer, c'est la question de l'efficacité énergétique. Vous savez, quand on a moins d'énergie pour la production d'un mètre cube d'eau, on a moins de charges opérationnelles. Et quand on a moins de pertes d'eau sur le réseau, on a également moins de pertes opérationnelles. Ce sont des éléments qui influent inévitablement sur les charges et en prenant en compte ces aspects-là, on peut être rassuré quant à la rentabilité de ce qu'on fait vis-à-vis de la résilience et de l'équilibre financier. À l'ONEA, nous sommes passés en 2022 de 0,68 kWh par mètre cube à maintenant 0,64 kWh par mètre cube. Ça veut dire que les mesures d'efficacité énergétique ont permis de stabiliser la consommation spécifique d'énergie avec l'accompagnement de notre projet. Il y en a de même au niveau de la réduction des pertes d'eau. Il semble qu'il y a des sociétés qui sont à un niveau de rendement réseau de 99%. Bon, c'est bon, mais faites attention pour ne pas chuter. Parce que l'ONEA faisait partie des meilleures sociétés d'eau au monde en termes de rendement réseau. Ces dernières années, notre rendement a connu des difficultés. Donc, ça fait déjà des points de partage d'expérience qu'on peut avoir, que ceux qui sont en bas puissent monter et ceux qui sont en haut aussi puissent maintenir leur niveau de performance. Mais, fort évidemment, on a amorcé une dynamique qui a permis de redresser un peu la pente cette année. On a eu le meilleur taux de rendement au cours de cette année qu'on a eu les 5 dernières années. Voilà. Et le dernier aspect, comme levier, c'est l'investissement. C'est coûteux, mais ça en vaut la peine. Parce qu'avec cet investissement sur les énergies renouvelables, on a une prévisibilité de l'énergie que nous allons utiliser durant 20 ans. Ça stabilise, ça sécurise la rentabilité des sociétés d'eau.
Okay, that is good. But let me deep dive a bit with you. What makes it worthwhile to invest in green projects led by water and sanitation utilities? Why will you do that? Why will a development partner do that? What value do such investments bring both the partner and the utility?
Oui, on a tous l'intérêt d'investir dans ce domaine-là. Autant que nous nous sommes engagés pour lutter contre les émissions de gaz à effet de serre, pour contenir un climat favorable à la survie. Donc, pour un partenaire au développement, investir ou accompagner une société d'eau dans ces initiatives vertes, c'est tout d'abord assurer le droit à l'eau et à l'assainissement. Parce que c'est par là que les sociétés ont la possibilité d'assurer la continuité de service, ont la possibilité d'être toujours rentables pour servir les plus démunis avec un tarif acceptable. Parce que s'ils n'arrivent pas à jouer sur le tarif, la société aura à souffrir au niveau de leur équilibre financier et ce n'est pas aussi intéressant. Maintenant, nous devons savoir que l'engagement qu'on a au niveau des partenaires au développement pour soutenir les contributions déterminées au niveau national pour réduire les émissions, si nous soutenons les projets verts des entreprises, des sociétés d'eau, nous participons également au CND, aux contributions déterminées au niveau national. Et nous participons également à l'ODD 7 qui parle d'énergie verte à faible coût. Et quand on prend les sociétés d'eau comme l'ONEA, c'est une société d'État. La société qui produit aussi l'électricité, c'est une société d'État. Donc, si nous explorons les sources d'énergie alternatives, nous contribuons à soulager les finances publiques. Et là, c'est tout le monde qui gagne. Donc, c'est un point d'intérêt assez crucial. Et quand on analyse aussi les retombées en termes de coût-bénéfice, ça vaut la peine d'être soutenu. Donc, je dirais qu'en un mot, que soutenir ces projets-là, c'est sécuriser le service, contribuer à sécuriser le service, c'est sécuriser également les finances publiques, mais aussi et surtout sécuriser le climat. Donc, ce sont des aspects essentiels à prendre en compte et à susciter l'intérêt au niveau des partenaires au développement, que ce soit par des subventions ou des prêts, ce sont des projets rentables. Le projet qu'il a présenté de 8,81 MW crête, c'est un projet rentable, un temps de retour de 10 ans, et on a une valeur actualisée nette de près de 4 millions d'euros. C'est rentable, que ce soit en prêt ou en subvention. Maintenant, il faut avoir ce changement de paradigme-là pour aller vers là et soutenir. Le Burkina a déjà un exemple palpable d'une station qui a été financée par 2 partenaires au développement, plus qui ont soutenu un partenariat public-privé et avec la contribution même de la Société nationale d'électrification. Donc, il y a un exemple palpable qui est là et qui demande à être seulement mis à l'échelle si les conditions sont réunies, surtout avec l'accompagnement financier et technique. Merci.
Great. So it is profitable, it's a win-win, it is mutually beneficial to both the development partner as well as the water and sanitation utilities. Thank you very much. Steve, can I come back to you? Yes, so Ghana Water Limited Social Connection Fund really shows how a utility can turn the challenge of affordability into an opportunity for inclusion. Could you tell us how this approach, especially the internal reforms and local resource mobilization, is helping Ghana Water to make equity and social inclusion parts of your everyday operations at Ghana Water?
Yeah, thank you very much. You would understand that the poor communities in the urban settings needed support. And Ghana Water started from a pilot situation where we looked at one community and assessed how best to support them. Remember, we started this with development partners. And going forward, it's about engagement, because with every community, there are different dynamics, demographics, the way of life, the way they do things is different. So it's not a one-fit-all situation. Looking at it, we have models, and the models are there for us to adopt. Like I said, we started from a pilot project. It went into different types of models. Ghana Water is now looking at institutionalizing it. Before that could be done, we had to do internal reforms. When I talk about internal reforms, there existed no way in our corporate structure where these poor communities would have been considered. So once we brought it on board, it means that we needed to give space, create the units that would be able to support the implementation of such actions. With that, with the results that we got, and don't forget, when there's no commitment from leadership, nothing can be done. So with the leadership support and commitment, we now improved on what we're doing and upgraded the unit into a department. With the department now, their main focus is to look at how best Ghana Water, within the limits of our strategic actions, can improve the health and development of these communities. And that is where we are now, and that is where this Social Connection Fund has come into play. Yes, we are with development partners, but I believe that we should be sustainable. And sustainability comes out from actions that we have to take. We don't need to always depend on development partners. How best within our corporate strategies, the corporate space, can make it sustainable. Now that we have a department, we have the staff on the ground. And like I said, every community that we serve has its own settings. So some will be prepared to pay 10 euro, some will be prepared to pay 100 euro, some will be prepared to pay 200 euro, based on even their culture and everything. So it is not a one-fit-all situation. And once we have recognized that, we should ensure that we have the models that can take care of every situation that we find, even not the same, at least a model that is near that we can implement. We are on the way to make it self-sufficient. Like I said in the presentation, we are looking at how best to use the tariff structure to be able to have funding to support this from today and tomorrow and the near future. So Ghana Water is well placed now. We need the support of the policymakers, and there's need for a lot of stakeholder engagement. terms of the tariff structure. Because where in the tariff can it be proved? We're looking at putting it in a place where talk about lifeline tariff, which caters for the poor. But it's not the poor people do not benefit from this lifeline tariff. It's still the rich. So how can we move from the lifeline tariff approach to an approach that can support affordability? Accessibility is one thing, and affordability is another thing. I'm main concern with the upper poor communities for them to afford. They depend on other sources, and that doesn't be in a position. We, in effect, lose revenue. Private people come in to make good of whatever, take advantage of the poor. So there's a balance. And that balance is what we as company, with support of board and management, is working on. And I can assure you, there's a lot of leadership commitment. Once leadership is committed, from where we were and where we are now, I believe we don't have any problem getting it right.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear this from you. So, Southern utility from the global South that are here to make sure that you get your senior managers, your managing directors, your deputy managing directors to be speaking about poor issues. Because that is where the leadership is, that is where you get the commitment from, that is where you get things to advance, things to progress for you to achieve what you want.
But the partnership with the communities and the engagement has given the company more insight in what we need to do. Because this department engages the communities for about 2-3 months before even the applications are brought in. So we get to know the challenges from the customers, which previously was not done. Thank you.
That is true. It has improved goodwill. Now Ghana Water can move into poor communities and have friends who are ready to speak for Ghana Water, to be the interface between the utility and the community. Thank you very much. Yes, I can see the MD of Burkina Faso, Onia, itching to speak. Chief, kindly go ahead and ask your question.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Je suis Flandion Idrissa Sourabier. Je suis le directeur général de l'Office national de l'eau et de l'assainissement. Alors, je voudrais en tout cas remercier les organisateurs pour avoir en tout cas associé l'ONEA à cette session. Alors, pour compléter un peu ce que le collaborateur a dit, alors il faut dire que au niveau de l'ONEA, nous avons, avec l'accompagnement d'un partenaire, on a pu construire une station de biogaz. Et c'est une station qui nous permet de produire de l'électricité à partir des bouts de vidange. Alors donc, c'est vraiment une stratégie pour vraiment s'adapter en tout cas à des changements climatiques qui va nous permettre en tout cas de produire de l'électricité et qui sera injectée dans le réseau pour en tout cas nous permettre de vraiment réduire nos dépenses en termes d'électricité. En tout cas, je voulais faire cette précision et profiter en tout cas de cette session pour voir s'il y a des partenaires, des investisseurs vraiment qui sont disponibles en tout cas pour nous accompagner afin de pouvoir mettre en œuvre cette stratégie d'adaptation au changement climatique que nous avons élaborée. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, sir. Are there partners here who would want to support ONIA? Are there development partners here? Just raise up your hand so that my boss can see you after here. He will just follow you and start talking to you. Are there any investors, development partners in the room? Can we see you? I know there are. So please, let's see you. Just one person raise up your hand. Yes, I was looking at you. Thank you for doing that. So you see her, when after this session, kindly meet her outside and start talking to her. Yes, so I saw your hand. Kindly mention your name, where you're coming from, and then ask your question. can be a question, it can be a contribution, it could be a suggestion.
Thank you, Sister. So I'm David Boys with Public Services International, global federation of trade unions. And what we do is try to help the workers get decent terms and conditions. And a little public service announcement, we'll be here in this room at 3:30, I think it is. And one of the things we're doing is working with sanitation workers in many countries. And my question is for our finance guy, but maybe you want to answer it, because a lot of the work in sanitation is dirty and dangerous. It's a really, really dangerous job. These workers have lousy wages and no protections. They're outsourced. The municipal government, which is responsible for sanitation, pays the money to an outsourcing company. That company subtracts a significant amount of it for their profit, and hence the monies available for the workers' wages and personal protective equipment are very low. And so my question to the private finance people here is, how can we justify profit extraction and taking it out of the system and back to the headquarters of whatever company you're working for in the water and sanitation sector? Because in some of these investors, their requirement is up to 20% profit per year. So how can we do that when we know it's coming out of the backs of the workers, or it's coming out of tariffs, or it's removed from the investment that the utilities need? It's a serious question when we're talking about private finance. Thank you.
Okay, Anton, can you respond to that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think in what we've seen in sanitation sector, the issue is not that there is high profits. It's actually there is generally no profits at all, or it's actually like negative profit. So I don't think we're yet in a situation where investors are reaping large profits from sanitation sector. That's not the situation currently. So I'm not sure how to respond to it, because that's not actually our experience. Our experience is that companies are struggling to actually even make it even, just to be like zero profitability level. They're actually run primarily by grants, not by commercial investors currently. There's very little commercial investment in sanitation enterprises at the moment. So we haven't seen that as a problem, but nevertheless, the actual issue which you mentioned, we do address it through the programming. I think it's a bit not necessarily directly related to private sector, but when we do program, for example, work in sanitation sector, work that involves sanitation workers, that's part of the whole formalization work. So when we formalize the sector, that will actually, on average, increase the quality standards, the safety standards, salaries perhaps where it's possible as well, of course, to meet the requirements. So I think that is the way to look at it, is through formalization. When it's informal, it's difficult to actually control anything.
Thank you. Yes, your name and your, okay, the lady has the mic, so she goes first. Yes.
Hello.
Can you
Good
mention
morning.
your name, where you're coming from?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Martha Oreduba. I work for Integrated Social Development Center, Ghana. I would like to say thank you, Madam Moderator, and your panel for such an insightful session. And I do agree with Chief by saying that the lifeline tariff structure has never benefited the urban poor in Ghana. So we look forward to seeing a different tariff structure that will benefit the poor. Thank you.
And what role will ISODEC play in
The usual role, advocating for Ghana Water or our utility partners to make sure water as a human right benefits all Ghanaians, especially the poor of the poorest. Thank you.
So then, when you finish with your question and it is answered, then you give to your brother.
Hi, my name is Abubakar Jallo. I am coming from Mali. after 10 years in the water sector, and now I am in the sanitation one. And something that is really interesting, it's about finance. So the question is for the finance guy again. I would like to know if you can elaborate a bit on the incentive that you use to make sure about the workers so that they can leave the informal to be formal. Because when they stay really informal, they are really on top of the game. They can have as much as money they want without telling whoever what they have. But if they come formal, it's a bit difficult, and then they need some traceability. Can you elaborate a bit on the incentive about that sanitation workers? Thank you.
Thanks. I don't have very thorough details, but I definitely can connect you with the people on the ground who have more details on this. But from our perspective, what I can basically answer in the previous question as well, what we've seen is in the informal sector, the safety standards are generally much lower. So that's one thing. So it's not as safe to work as an informal sanitation worker versus a formal one. Also, when we look at then, for example, the value chain from the transport perspective, so through licensing and then becoming part of this, let's say, for example, the results-based outcome scheme, of course, that is a financial incentive. So the results-based outcome scheme is actually, it's a financial outcome for the private sector workers. So that's the idea to bring these incentive models, financial incentive models for the private sector, then collect and transport the waste, and then become part of the formal system. So that's, as you said, like, of course, finances do weigh. So we do realize that, and we're trying to build these financial incentives for the private sector to become part of the actual formal, publicly driven sanitation value chain. That's the key of it, in my opinion, coming from the finance side as well, to make sure that they are incentivized. If there's no financial incentive, safety is one thing, but as you said, like, financial incentives are the driving force on that side.
Go next. I hope you have been answered.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maunyu. I work with Ghana Water, and also I'm a COP moderator for the Young Water Professionals under the Global Water Operators Partnership Alliance, UN Habitat. My question goes to Michael. Thank you for the excellent presentation, and also rides on the back of what Martha said from ISODEC on the lifeline tariff. I don't have the statistics to back the numbers, but if you look at the low-income urban communities where we have the poorest of the poor of the poorest, we have those who are like what we call the indigents, right? And my question is that, do we foresee a future where this social connection fund model would be customized to absorb indigents that are currently within most of our communities? Because I believe this is an issue of human rights, and irrespective of race, gender, your status in the society, you should be able to get access to water. So I just want to ask, do we see a future where indigents will be included in this SCF? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. You realize our connection fund is based on the indigenous, so I don't get your question very well. But it's based on the indigenous that we set up the social connection fund. Like I said, once upon a time there was a tiny village somewhere, and urbanization, because of urbanization, spread of houses, you realize that you find that conurbation in the affluent area. And that is the concept that we used to build up the social connection fund. So when we talk about the poor in the urban communities, we talk about villages which used to exist alone, separately, but now have been caught up by urbanization. So that is the model that we built upon. So that is already considered per your question. Thank you.
To add to that, I've seen that we work with within the inner city perimeter. Sometimes we move to the peri-urban areas. In some cases, we even move outside the city to rural communities that have urban characteristics, like whole communities like Atrensia, Techimentia, and all those people, where with support from Water for Life, we have extended and giving people the opportunity to connect. So we are working with almost everyone who lives within such communities. Thank you. Ah, looking at the time, we have 4 minutes. Yeah. Maybe I give the opportunity to the last speaker. Yes, ma'am, kindly go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Sophie Molokwane. I'm currently from South Africa, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institute of South Africa, where utilities, probably, and municipalities will have to work together somewhere. The question I want to raise is that yesterday I attended the session at Vientre. They were speaking about a number of modalities in terms of the sanitary system, sanitation system. I wonder from the panelists, one of the critical issues that was raised, there was something like there is a flying toilets in Accra. Flying toilet in Accra because there's no system where they can say they use any, it's an unsure toilet anyhow. So I'm just asking from the panelists, whether is there any interest of investing in Accra and making sure that the lives of the people of Accra, in terms of the dignity, is being improved. Because they say flying toilet is a modality of sanitation. It's an unsure toilet where you go and deal with it, then put in a plastic and you throw it. Wherever it fell, what is going to your heart is something else. So I think from the Homeless People's Federation point of view, the Slum Dwellers International, that's what they were raising yesterday. So I'm pleading with you as innovative financiers to ensure that the dignity is granted to the people of Accra. Thank you very much.
So do we have anybody who wants to respond, or I should respond since I am also coming from Accra?
Flying toilets. There's nothing like flying toilets in Accra.
Yeah.
I myself, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
If you talk about open defecation and somebody openly defecating and throwing it away, fine, but you don't have such terms in Accra. So it is not like that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I also want to add that over the past few years, about 10 years now, a lot of toilets have been built in Accra, getting close to over 100,000 toilets under the Gamma initiative led by the World Bank, projects led by UNICEF, UN Habitat, Gallup, and others. So now when you come to Accra, I can say, because I have been part of it, that most of the houses in the low-income urban communities have access to toilets. They have built on-site toilets. Schools have access to toilets, which wasn't the case previously. Health centers have access to toilets. So the issue of flying toilets for me is in the past. It doesn't exist currently. So if I had been there, I would have debunked it. It's good that you have brought it here. It is not true presently. Okay, so if there are no more questions, then we would want to wrap up our session. I wouldn't want to try to summarize everything because you have all been here. You have heard the presenters themselves, yourselves. So we have all seen powerful examples of how utility-led innovation can expand access and advance the human right to water, how partnerships and market-based approaches can scale sanitation services, and how climate-smart initiatives can strengthen both sustainability and financial resilience. The presentations have highlighted yet diverse yet complementary pathways, but the common lesson is clear. Innovative financing, institutional leadership, as has been exhibited by Engineer Bedu, collaboration between utility partners, the private sector, as well as communities themselves, are essential to delivering inclusive, resilient, and sustainable water and sanitation services. And these stories show us that scaling such approaches is not only possible, but it is also highly impactful. So let us take these lessons forward and commit to turning innovation and collaboration into real lasting changes in our communities. Thank you so much for coming, and a round of applause to our guest presenters. They have done really well. Thank you all very much for making time to come and sharing your expertise with all of us. We are grateful. Thank you for joining the session.